Today we're gonna talk about Guns N' Roses and we're gonna take a look at the style and technique of Duff McKagan. Duff is the quintessential rock and roll bass player. A towering stage presence, a distinct voice that really gives an extra to the backing vocals, and most importantly, a unique and instantly recognizable sound that combined with some really original bass lines makes the sound of Guns N' Roses stand out even more from the other rock production of the era. If you listen to Appetite for Destruction through some decent headphones, you will hear that from a spatial standpoint, the bass guitar is at the center of the mix, connecting the guitars with Steven Adler's big boomy bass drum and Axl singing on top. So despite being a foundation instrument, the bass guitar in Guns N' Roses plays a key role in defining their sound. I have to add that Duff is my personal favorite bass player ever, and that it was after seeing the 1992 GNR Live in Tokyo show on VHS that I decided I was going to be a bassist. So I put together a few tips that you can use if you want to sound like Duff McKagan on bass. And even though his tribally tone plays a big part in creating the epic rhythm section GNR are known for, again we're gonna focus only on technique and songwriting choices. Tip number 1. Use a lot of ghost notes. You're not gonna be able to hear this in the records, but thanks God there's a few isolated tracks around. And if you listen to them, you will hear that the bass parts are packed with ghost notes that give an extra percussion sound to the whole thing. Tip number 2. Use high notes to double drum fills. Apart from the trademark sound, this is the main feature that makes GNR bass lines instantly recognizable. Many drum fills, mostly on the snare drum, are underlined by the bass using notes from the first and the second string, which have a brighter sound. The higher frequencies of the snare and the higher bass notes make a perfect combination that really stands out and cuts through the mix. Tip number 3. End on a high note before empty bars. Another instance of how Duff uses high notes to build anticipation. When a break in the song is coming up, or you have an empty bar or so, he always ends the part on a high note rather than a low one. Tip number 4. Play the second verse slightly different from the first. Most of the time, Duff throws in a little lick or scale in one of the verses, which helps creating dynamics, variety, and makes the part more interesting. Tip number 5 is play licks using a descending pentatonic scale. Here's another Duff's personal favorite. Tip number 6. Underlying guitar arpeggios. Another thing Duff does all the time is to play along guitar arpeggios. And whether it's just the root notes or more complex stuff, the bass is often there. Here's a few examples. Tip number 7. Pick all the notes. Duff is often referred to as a punk bass player, and he does very little use of legato, hammer-ons, pull-offs and slides. So if you want to sound like Duff, a good general rule is to limit or avoid completely the use of these techniques and focus on getting a solid picking sound. And finally, tip number 8, which is listen to the man himself. In a recent interview with Music Radar, Duff himself gave 5 tips for bass players. I'm gonna put the link in the description of this video, so make sure you check it out. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about Duff in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Instagram.